Straight up. God, welcome back to Rahab Bible Study. We only got one scripture that whole that whole segment, didn't we? With our technical issues and stuff. I apologize. It's my fault. Troy's a genius, but I'm just not. I tend to mess things up, and I don't mean to. I'm just not really technically savvy like he is. Okay. I want to finish this scripture because I'm not really done with it. Oh, let me see. I wanted to answer Vonda's question. Let's go back here. Vonda said, Lisa, what do you think about Kim Jong-un inviting the president to talk? Well, I'll give you a spirit and a flesh response, okay? Spiritually, I believe that there is a plan that is written and that we are headed for disaster. Because it's written that way, okay? It's written to happen that way, and how we respond to it is depending on just our personal relationship with Christ and how much we rely on the word, which I highly recommend. But as far as I'll tell you, I'm concerned for our president. I think it would be a mistake for him to hey, talk on the phone, talk on Skype or something, but don't go there. I don't want our president over there. Why? That's not wisdom, you know. If he invites the president to talk, then talk. I'd say talking is always a good idea. But I also know that the globalists have a plan. See, Satan is in charge of the kingdoms of this world, according to Luke chapter 4. And so that would mean that he's in control of all of the leaders as well. I think God, acts through some of them. And I like President Trump. I like him better than I did Obama because Obama's socialist policies really have affected me personally in a lot of ways. We were charged more for, the penalties on Obamacare than it would have cost us to have insurance. So, and plus I had explained on my wall that we paid cash we didn't have insurance for years, and we paid cash to go to the, urgent care and cash for prescriptions. And if you add that up, all it cost us to pay it ourselves out of pocket, it was less than the insurance premiums we pay now that we do have insurance. So having insurance is not, costs you more than what you're even paying. The premium costs you more than you would spend if you just pay cash for your care as you go. So what happens is people get scared of, people get scared of catastrophic things happening. And that's why they want, insurance. If you need an ambulance, they don't want to pay that $1,000 out of their pockets, things like that. So, but I know that's not on topic of your question. Sorry. I didn't know that Kim Jong-un invited the president to talk, but I think talking is always fine as long as they don't risk our president by sending him over there to do it. I don't think that would be a good idea at all. Let Kim Jong-un come here. He's safe here. Nobody's going to hurt him if he comes. I don't know what they would have to talk about unless, Kim Jong-un wants to. Karen says, I don't know what I think about Kim Jong-un. I want to know what Trump is doing with all this publicity about him cheating on his wife. It's all over the news. He needs to cool his jets. Karen said, why does only one receive the prize? Well, in a race, one receives the prize, and that's the analogy that the scripture is giving. It's encouraging you to run your race and obtain the prize. Okay? There's a race set before us. But notice in 34 though, and then we're going to move on. Awake to righteousness and sin not. He's like, wake up, realize that everything's temporal around you. This is not the end of the world. You don't have to be overwhelmed. You don't have to melt down. You don't have to freak out. It's a training program. Okay. But it is created to feel absolutely real. And maybe this seems really obviously not real from an outside perspective, but it's all we know, so it feels real to us since it's all we know. Maybe you have to come in here with no memory to be able to buy into it, that it's not real. But it says here, excuse me, for some have not the knowledge of God. I speak to your shame. So those who have the knowledge of God, you don't want to get your mind sucked back into the world's control once you've been released from that and you realize who you are. And we were answering the questions, who am I? What am I? Where am I? And why am I here? Who we are is children of God who existed prior to coming here. And that's what we already said. And then what are we? We are creatures that are invisible energy, like software. Okay. This body is not who you are. And who you are is the person within. Okay. So the person within is invisible, encased in this biological machine, this biological spacesuit that we are using to function with in this world. And that's what God is too. God is invisible. We are his children, and we're invisible too without these bodies. But he can put you inside a body, hook you up to it, and it'll function for you, and then you can function in this world. And that's what, that's who we are. We are invisible beings consisting of energy and light, and like God is. Okay, that's the part of us that's made in the invisible image of God. Then God created himself a perfect human body and then stepped into it. And then so what we step into is also a human body form, same as what he created for himself, but with a sin nature. And he has no sin nature, because we're here to learn an experiential knowledge of good and evil, and to find out what you're made of on the inside. Will you be like an animal and strictly self-survivalist? Or will you give of yourself like Jesus did? like the disciples did, like he commands us to do. The faith, hope, and charity. But the greatest of these is charity. That means when you get to where you get to the end of the procedure and you can give of yourself sacrificially for others, rather than thinking me, 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 me. You're thinking, you're not thinking you at all. You're thinking only of others rather than yourself. See, God will think of you if you just think of everybody else. And that's the key. He says right here, he says, for some have not the knowledge of God. I speak to your shame. So it's like when believers are released from the captivity of the world, we tend to get sucked back in. If we don't maintain a daily study and a daily walk with God, it's real easy to get sucked right back in to that mindset. And he's saying, I speak this to your shame. Don't let it happen. Now, 1 Corinthians 15:35. Let's see if we can make some tracks here. But some man will say, how are the dead raised up? And with what body do they come? They're asking, how are the dead raised up? And with what body do they come? It's what I think it is like what we just discussed, that how are the dead raised up? Well, if this is a simulation, if it's virtual reality, death is just leaving the simulation and resurrection is just coming right back into it, to the body you left here, isn't it? Technology, not mysticism. So how are the dead raised up? It's possible that, like with VR, your real body's outside your range of perception. And once you're pulled out of this world, you find yourself there. Just like if you go into VR in this world and you put on the glasses and you're in some other world, you're in Australia or on top of Everest or whatever, it looks and feels like you're really there. But if you take the glasses off, you're not really there, are you? I think that's kind of like what we're looking at here, that this world is a temporal created world, not real. So that would answer how the dead are raised up, right? If you leave VR, you can just come back inside it. And your consciousness is reinserted in the body that you left here. And with what body do they come? Now, if it's technology, then regenerating your body is no big deal, is it? Because it's digital. The Lord has your DNA recipe. The word says every hair is numbered. That means there's specifications on these bodies that we're in. And so he can, with some, code changes even, can cage death. Okay? With code changes, he can give you an immortal, flesh, perfect, strong, healthy body. Just with code changes. If that's what this is, if it's digital. In verse 36, thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. He says you're not going to be what you can be and what you ultimately will be until you're planted in the ground. So whatever we think we are now is not what we will be at some point later on down the road. Because he says, thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. So he's talking about a seed. Okay, you put a seed. If you have a seed sitting in a package in your pantry, it's not going to grow, is it? It has to die and be planted first. You have to plant it under the soil. It's like our bodies. He's likening our flesh bodies to a seed that is planted. And after it's planted, it becomes what it will. And that's what he's talking about there. In verse 37, and that which thou sowest, thou sowest not that body that shall be, but bear grain. He's saying the seed doesn't look like what the end result of that seed's going to be. Okay. Yeah, maybe like with flowers, you plant a bulb, a flower bulb, or like a tulip bulb or whatever. You can't tell by looking at the bulb what it's going to produce. And that's what he's saying. He said, and that which thou sowest not that body that shall be, but bear grain. It may chance of wheat or of some other grain. You don't know what kind of seed it is or what kind of grain it is. Now, you learn how to recognize seeds of which they are. But, if you've never seen a seed before and somebody hands you one, you have no idea. Well, I don't know what that's going to be. I can hold a seed in my hand, and I have no idea what it is. Is it broccoli or is it daisies or what is it? I have no idea. But he's saying it may chance of wheat or some other grain. But God giveth it a body as it hath pleased him. So the body it receives is that which is pleasing to the Lord, and to every seed his own body. So we are, the word says in Matthew 13:38, we are, that the field is the world, the good seed is the children of the kingdom, and the tares are the children of the evil one. That's what it says. It doesn't say that we're all tares and then we become wheat as we learn about Jesus. No. You're born either wheat or tares. If you're wheat, you're under the sacrifice, and Jesus is going to call you out of the captivity of this world. If you're a tare, you don't have a salvation plan. You're just programming. Okay? Just programming. Because you say, well, gosh, how do you know that? And well, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. If Jesus is in you, you're alive. If Jesus is not in you, Jesus is not in them, and he is the life, so they can't be alive, can they? Well, what are they? Programming. Animated dust. Just programming. But God giveth it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed his own body. Verse 39 of 1 Corinthians 15. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds. So there's different types of flesh, is what he's saying here. In verse 40, there are also celestial bodies. That means bodies of things that exist up in the stars, and bodies terrestrial. Did he just tell us that we are not alone? Yeah, I think that's what he just did. There are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. Ours are terrestrial for on the earth, but the person we are on the inside is celestial. Okay. But this says there's celestial bodies. Now that means there's something out there with a body. That means we're not alone. There are things out there. There are positive and negative forces, which are called angels and demons and devils. In verse 40, there are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial, but the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another, something totally different. In verse 41, there is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. For one star differeth from another star in glory. So he's talking about how all these things have different types of bodies, but they all have a different, they all have glory on different levels. In verse 42, so also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption. So a body is deteriorating and getting all yucky and so you put it in the ground. Okay, so also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption, that's the deterioration, and it's put into the ground, but it is raised in incorruption. When Jesus raises that person, their body isn't going to be all yucky and gooey and stuff like that. It's going to be perfected. And that could be just as the result of code changes in the simulation. In verse 43, it is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. I mean, I don't want anybody to see me dead. I mean, if I have to die before Jesus comes, just shut the box, cram it in the crematory, and call it a day. Because I don't, it's dishonorable for people to see your dead body. Even though I believe that it's, I know some people need to see their loved ones like that to grasp that they've moved on. But for me personally, I don't want to see that. When my grandma died, I didn't go in there and see. I didn't look at her because I don't want anybody looking at me like that. I mean, how bad is that? I would just rather nobody see me if I'm not in my body. It's disgusting. But, and also, I mean, just on a personal note, anytime I go to a funeral and I've seen somebody dead laying there in the casket, every time I think of them after that, that's what comes to my mind. And I hate that. I don't want to see that in my mind. I don't want to remember somebody that way. And so I try to avoid it. If I can possibly get out of it, I don't go to funerals because we don't grieve like those who have no hope. Okay. I just know that they've left their body here. They're fine outside the simulator and they'll be back. So it just seems pointless to me, from my perspective, to go through all that, funeral stuff, because it's not goodbye. It's just, I'll see you later. And that's all it is. It is never the end of the world for the children of God, dead or alive. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. Karen says, why does only one receive the prize? Well, I think we talked about that. Did I say that, or did I just dream it or something? I know that that's pretty far back. I need to scroll forward, don't I? The prize, we are all individually after the prize. I think I might have answered that. Now I prayed for everybody. Hi, Natasha. It's good to see you, sister. She says, in my opinion, we're living in a VR. It makes perfect sense if we are. Let's see. The Resurrection Uncovered. Welcome. Resurrection Uncovered. Hi, Ann. Okay, let's see. Oh, there's Alana. Hi, Kelly. I'm so glad to see all of you. And Ann, nice to see you, sister. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking here. I just want to make sure Karen says, I believe in the Bible, woman was made from the rib of Adam to be his partner, to walk beside him. Man is the head of the household. And that's what we're supposed to do. Do you know it takes more strength, more inner strength to submit than it does to lead? It makes sense to you, Natasha? She said she thinks that it's possible we're living in VR. Crash, I'm trying to figure out, you're talking to everybody else. You're not really asking questions, are you? Crash, are you male or female? Some things you say make me think that you're male, and some things make me think that you're female. So I don't know. Can you clue us in on which? Are you male or female? If you could let us know, I would really appreciate that, because I see that you're interacting with a lot of people in the chat room, and that's great. Oh, Anne said, I thought Corinthians was the love chapter, and now I hear charity. Well, charity is love in action. See, not just love by feelings. It's love manifested in actions that actually help people. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off here in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 41. Straight up.